So today on Monica Cooks in Her Pajamas, which I really do cook in my pajamas, I'm actually making a Peruvian style roast chicken. And it's a half a chicken because I made a half a chicken, as you might remember, the other night. And people asked me to do a video, so I was like, all right, I'll do a video. So it's clearly light out. I have to start a little early because the Peruvian chicken actually requires a marinade that sits for, you know, like 6 hours. You don't have to wait that long, but it's about almost 3 o'clock, so I gotta get going now if I wanna try to do this, like, start cooking it like 4 hours later. So anyway, I've got all my stuff here and I'm gonna make the marinade. We're gonna put everything into a blender, except for, of course, the chicken, because it's gonna be marinated. So I've got 4 garlic cloves, and they basically just want you to chop them. So I'm just gonna smash them with this is my Chinese cleaver. I love it. It's very sharp. It slices very thin. And I'm just gonna peel off the skin, and I'm not gonna worry too much about it because it's going in the blender. You know, they tell you to rough chop it, so you can just kind of hack it in one if you want and just toss it in. So we're gonna do that with all 4. A little smash. Now, sometimes, you know, your garlic has a little bit of green because it starts to grow. It's not a bad thing. You can pull that out. It actually just means that your garlic is, you know, is definitely getting older and it can start to sprout and it gets very sharp. Like, it's very strong, but I like garlic and so does Clay, so I don't really worry about it too much. And just put that in. Okay. They want basically a 1/4 cup of lime juice. So when I have a lot of lime, I go ahead and squeeze the limes, and I get out one of those silicone ice trays, and I pour in 1 tablespoon each, and I freeze it that way. So each of these is a tablespoon, and 4 tablespoons is a 1/4 cup. So we're just going to use that. So 1 tablespoon kosher salt. Just make it as level as possible. You can use a knife if you want. I don't usually worry about it. So we need 2 teaspoons of paprika. So I'm just gonna level it off. Sometimes I do that over a little ramekin, which I actually use these the same size. I have like 12 of them. They're my mise en place. I love them. But that way I can always get it back into, you know, and I don't waste it. So I'm gonna do that later. So I need 1 teaspoon of black pepper. And this is a nice wide mouth, so I can go ahead and just shake it in there. And it's pretty level, so I'm not too worried about it. Go ahead and add that in. And then we need to do cumin, and you need a tablespoon of cumin. Of course, I'm doing it over a ramekin again, because I don't want to waste it. So that's that. And then we're going to do a teaspoon of oregano. I have different oreganos as well. I chose the Mexican oregano, and I love oregano, so I just go ahead and do a little extra. Kind of push it down. And then I'm going to put it in my hand, and I'm actually going to just do this with it, grind it a little bit, bring out some of the oils and give it a little bit more flavor. Grind it up a bit, let it go in there. I mean, it's going to get ground with everything inside, but it's kind of nice when you get your hands on it. Okay, so we're going to add now 2 teaspoons of sugar, and that's an easy one to level off. So 1 and 2. All right, so all of our spices are in here. We're going to go ahead and also add some olive oil, and we're going to blend that until it's smooth. So we need 3 tablespoons of olive oil for this recipe. You'll notice I have my olive oil. I actually learned this from Gordon Ramsay. He puts his oils in separate containers, and it's made my life so much easier. So I have a bunch of different ones that you can use for different types of cooking. High heat, grapeseed, peanut oil. It's amazing. Okay, now we're gonna blend this baby. Bring our Vitamix. We don't want this going all over. And then you can just mix it. Now let's take a look and see. Oh yeah, it's getting there. It's nice. Okay, turn that off, and next we're gonna put it on the chicken. So here we have our chicken. This was in the freezer. Like I said, I basically cut a chicken in half and froze half of it. So it is now defrosted in the refrigerator overnight. And I'm just patting it dry. I know that I'm going to be putting a liquid on it, this marinade, but I find that, you know, to work with it, it can be kind of sloppy, you know, if you're trying to get up under the skin, which is what I want to do. So, you know, you can find like a little hole, use your finger, and actually create like a little pathway underneath the skin. You want to be careful so you don't end up ripping it off. You can do the same thing with the bottom. So I'm going to put my finger here and get your finger in there and get it open there by the drumstick. So I'm going to put a little bit of this just underneath that skin. First, I'm going to get it under there. And then underneath the breast. Be careful not to cut yourself because the blade's still in there. They don't come off of these Vitamixes. Okay, and now I'm actually going to put it in a container and I'm going to pour the rest of the marinade all over it. I'm just going to use my hands. And I'm just going to rub it all on it, front and back. That. And it's going to sit in this plastic container for as long as possible, honestly. Okay, we're going to put it in the fridge. And we'll be back in a couple hours and we will cook this puppy. We're back. The chicken has been marinating for about 4 hours, and so it's time to put it in the oven. So it should be at 450 for about 20 minutes, and then I'm going to lower it to about 375 for another 20 minutes. This half a chicken will need to cook for about 40 to 45 minutes, and then rest for at least 10 to 15 afterwards. So you want to line a baking sheet. Sometimes they're called jelly rolls when they have edges all around the sides. You want to line it with a piece of tin foil so it doesn't make such a mess. And then we're going to put a rack on top to put the chicken on. And we're doing that because there's so much marinade and stuff going on that we want to be able to retain some of it, but also have some end up on the tin foil. So I'm going to spray with a little bit of another cooking spray just to try to make that so it's easier to get everything off. And then I'm going to place the chicken on top. And I'm going to actually just add the rest of the stuff that's on the bottom here, just make sure that everything is covered before it goes in. You know, ideally you want your chicken to be able to sit out for like 20 minutes out of the refrigerator and get to room temperature before you put it in the oven, because if it's too cold it makes it that much harder to cook. And we really want this to crisp up. That's why we're going with the high heat at the beginning and then reducing it after 20 minutes. So we're ready to go. Pop the bird in. The idea is that you want to check it. At least I do. I want to check it every 20 minutes. So I'll turn down the heat, I'll check it, I'll do another 20 minutes, and then I'm going to insert a thermometer into the thigh, making sure I avoid the bone, because I want it to get to 165 degrees internal temperature. So I might take it out at about 160 because I know there's going to be residual cooking happening as it's resting. And I really don't like overcooked chicken. I like it moist. So we'll be back with our beans and rice. So while the chicken's cooking, I'm going to start making the Cuban style black beans. And I say Cuban style because I don't know about you, but I don't have enough time to actually make beans from scratch. So I'm actually going to use Goya black beans, and I'm going to augment that. So we're going to add to the food processor half an onion, 2 garlic cloves, 3 tablespoons of cilantro, and then 2 green onions. It also calls for bell pepper, but anybody who knows me knows that I hate bell pepper. every color, green, red, yellow, orange, whatever. Hate it. And we're just gonna mix that, maybe pulse it a bit, and get it chopped, not too fine, but to a nice consistency, because we're actually gonna saute this in oil and then add the beans and water and some other things, and we'll do that in a second. So after I've pulsed this a bit in the food processor, you kind of want to get a nice consistency. You don't want anything too big, because otherwise it'll stand out in the dish. So we're gonna saute this really quick over medium high heat with 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and then we're gonna add the beans and everything to this. So we'll just do it in one pot. Let that get hot. So while that's getting hot, I'm gonna have a little bit of wine, because I always drink when I cook. I shouldn't say always. We're gonna go ahead and add this in. I'm gonna saute the vegetables until they're fragrant and soft, just a few minutes. You don't want your garlic to burn, so it's good to keep it moving about. That smells good. So we're gonna let that go for a couple minutes. Okay, that's time. So now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna add our beans, about 15.5 ounces. We're gonna put everything, including the I guess you call it the juice. Just carefully move that around. You want to be careful not to hurt your beans and break them and make them all nasty. Next, we're going to add a half a cup of water, a bay leaf, 1 teaspoon of red wine vinegar, a pinch of cumin, and a pinch of oregano. Roll that around and really get all of the oils and everything out of the dried herb. We're going to mix that around, and then we're going to just let it simmer for about 15 to 20 minutes. You can do longer than that as well. Sometimes I let it go for a half an hour. I'm just going to bring it to a boil, and then we'll turn it down to a simmer once it gets going. All right, it's starting to boil. I'm going to turn it down to a simmer, cover it, and set my timer for 20 minutes. That's the beans. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to make tonight for dinner in my pajamas is our Cuban style rice. It's a long grain white rice. I actually use jasmine. We're going to start with heating up 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And I'm using a non-stick because sometimes rice has a tendency to stick, which is a problem. So as that's heating up, we take a smashed clove of garlic, and we're actually going to just put that in the olive oil. And we're just going to let that just flavor the oil for 2 minutes. And then we're going to remove it. And it imparts a beautiful, beautiful taste actually to the rice. So we don't want it too high the heat, because we don't want this to brown and get bitter, as I mentioned before. Looks good. I'm getting excited about dinner. I'm getting fired up. It's starting to get a little brown, so I'm reducing the heat a bit because I don't want it to get too overcooked. Sometimes you can just remove it from the heat for a few seconds. Okay, so it's been 2 minutes, and now I'm going to actually take the garlic out and just remove the garlic from the oil. With the heat still on, we're going to add water, 2.5 cups. We're going to let that go to a boil. Now we're going to add a teaspoon of salt. Bring that to a boil. You've got that great flavored oil in there, your salt, your water. Bring it to a boil, and then we're going to add our rice. Okay, so our water's boiling. We're going to add our 1.5 cups of our long grain rice. Give that a little gentle mix. Let it come back to a boil. And when it's boiling, we will cover it and turn it down to a simmer. And we're going to let that cook for 20 minutes without removing the lid. You don't want to touch it. When you're cooking rice, you just have to believe it's going to be fine. So I just leave it, and then when it's done, I let it sit for another 5 minutes, and then I fluff it with a fork. So we'll be back to check on this stuff in a couple minutes. So I checked the chicken at 20 minutes, and it was looking really good. It's been another 10 minutes, and it looks beautiful, but I don't want it to get any more color than that, so I'm going to put a little bit of tin foil on it to cover up its little bits. And then I'll put it back in the oven for another probably 8 to 10 minutes. And then I'll check it with a thermometer. Okay, so our beans are done. We're gonna remove the bay leaf. Apparently that's dangerous to eat. And then I actually tasted it a second ago. It needs a little bit of salt, a little pepper. Now you can put this in while it's cooking, but I like to do that at the end. I just kind of do it to taste, so I kind of know how much salt I like. Find some pepper in there. Yes. Oh my god, that's great. Okay. And then the rice is done too. So we're gonna just, it's been sitting for 5 minutes. I'm just gonna fluff that with a fork. Ooh, it looks nice. All the water absorbed. You want to be careful. I've got a nonstick, so I got to be careful with my fork not to scratch it. Cover that, and our chicken should be ready in like 2 minutes. Oh my god, it's so good. Okay, so the alarm's gone off for the chicken. We're gonna take it out and we're gonna check it with a thermometer. And I'm just gonna go into the thigh, try to avoid the bone. Oh yeah, it's there. Okay. Now we're gonna let this rest for like 10 minutes. So I'm gonna put it on a cutting board so it gets off the heat. And then we're gonna be ready to carve it. And that's it, it's done. You're ready to eat. So we got a little Peruvian chicken and a little bit of Cuban rice and beans. And I actually made this green salsa to go with the chicken. It's a Peruvian green salsa. It's basically a whole bunch of cilantro, like a cup of cilantro leaves, a half a cup of mayonnaise, quarter cup of sour cream. It's got garlic, it's got 3 jalapenos. I've removed the seeds because it's a little bit too much. And it also has, lime. So, thanks for watching. I did this just because people asked me if I would do it, so I thought I would. I'm definitely no Martha Stewart, clearly. I'm more like Julia Child. But let's eat, and I hope you guys will do the same. Maybe someone will make a video and post one of their recipes. I'd love to see that. Come on, let's eat.